Welcome to Upleveling, the podcast dedicated to building better leaders, smarter systems, and bigger results. Today, I want to talk about something that every business owner says that they want, but very few actually build it on purpose, and that is culture. You can have great marketing, great systems, great AI tools, but if you don't have great people, none of it is really going to work. Without the right team, you don't really have a business. You have a job that happens to have overhead, and we don't want that. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 things that actually build a culture people want to stay in. So I want you to think about if you've ever lost a great employee, or if you've kept someone longer than you should have, because we've all done that. And what I want you to know is that turnover costs you money, but what it really costs you is momentum. And momentum is everything in a small business. It's what moves you from surviving to scaling. And every time you have to replace someone, your business has to start over just a little bit. That's why retention really isn't about HR, it's about growth. And I know this firsthand. I own and run a CPA firm. And let's be honest, there are a dime a dozen of us out there. We all do taxes, we all do accounting, we all prepare financials. So I just started to ask myself, how can I do it better? How can I do it different? But the deeper I thought about it, the more I realized at the end of the day, I can't do any of it without people. The people are the ones who deliver the service. They build the relationships and create the experience that our clients remember. So without them, I'd be back to doing it all myself. And that's not a business, that's a job. So that led me to a bigger question. If every CPA firm offers the same core services, what's going to make mine great? What's going to attract talented, motivated people to my firm and keep them? I started thinking back to when I worked for other companies and really what made me stay, what made me want to leave, what helped me thrive, and what I wish leaders had done differently. I realized that what makes a firm or any business truly great isn't the product, it's the people behind it. So I asked myself, if I want to build something special, what kind of culture do I need to create it? The answer became the foundation for everything that we do at Align CPA. It shaped how I've grown my own team from one person to a high-performing team of 9 that truly loves what they do and who they do it with. And it's what I now call the 5 C's of building culture. And these 5 things aren't theory. They're the daily habits and decisions that determine whether people stay, grow, and thrive, or if they quietly check out and leave. And these things aren't specific to Gen Zers, millennials, or boomers. They apply to everyone because at the end of the day, we're all human. And the good news, every single one of these is something that you can build on purpose. So let's jump into it. How do you actually build a culture that people don't want to leave? Let's walk through the 5 principles that shape every great workplace. The first one, we're going to do a deep dive into core values. These are the things that you are going to learn to hire and fire by. There actually was a Harvard Business Review, and they did a great piece. It was by Jim Collins, and he said something that's always stuck with me. A true core value is something you would hold no matter what industry you were in, even if it puts you at a competitive disadvantage, because it's not just what you do, it's who you are. That's what propels a business forward. It's that deep alignment between what you say you value and what you actually live out every day. So let's talk about some examples and what that looks like in action. So at Aligned, one of our core values is do the right thing. I know that sounds simple, but it's really powerful because integrity gets tested when things go wrong. not when everything is going right. So in the interview process, I may ask a question like, tell me about a time you made a mistake. What happened and how did you handle it? I'm not looking for perfection. I'm really looking for humility, ownership, and honesty. Can they tell me that they've screwed up? Because honestly, at the end of the day, we all have, and we've all made mistakes. But it's what do you do afterwards? I want to make sure they're not going to hide it. They're not going to cover it up, but we can own the mistake and fix it. That's the kind of person who fits our culture. So another example is continuous learning. In this industry, especially with how fast technology and tax laws are changing, if you don't love learning, you're going to fall behind. So when I'm interviewing, I might ask questions like, what have you been learning lately? What books are you reading? What podcasts or apps are you into right now? And I'm not really trying to test them. I'm just looking for curiosity, because curiosity is what drives growth. If you're going to be a part of my team, you have to believe in that. You have to want to grow and improve and push yourself. I don't expect people to be perfect, but I do expect them to be growing. And if they don't align with that, they're not going to enjoy working at Aligned. So that means that's going to bring the team down, and it's not going to be a good hire. Because the thing is, core values can't just show up during the hiring process. They have to show up every day. And inside of Aligned, we talk about our values constantly. How do we do that? In our monthly team meetings, we highlight a value and talk about what it looks like in action. Sometimes that means celebrating a win. Sometimes it means reflecting on where we could have done better. We also have a Slack channel dedicated to shout outs. So anytime a team member does something that really lives out our values, someone tags them. It keeps the energy high and reinforces what we stand for. All of that is to build consistency, because culture isn't built in all of these big moments. It's built in the small habits that reinforce who you are. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, this all makes sense, but how do I actually figure out what my company's core values are? I'm going to give you a simple way to start, and you don't need a consultant or a retreat to do it. I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what behaviors make me most proud of my team? 2, what behaviors drive me crazy or make me want to pull out my hair? And 3, what would I never compromise on, even if it cost me business? And what you want to do is look for patterns. The things that you celebrate and the things you can't tolerate, that's where your values really live. You want to name them and define them. So don't stop at a word like integrity. Write out what that actually means to you in your day-to-day. For us, do the right thing means we own mistakes, we fix them fast, and we communicate honestly. Once you've done all of that, I want you to talk about your values every week with your team. You can do it in interviews, in meetings, in coaching, because if you're not using them to make decisions, they're just decoration. So that's the first C, core values. They're your anchor. They're going to guide you in who you hire, how you lead them, and what you protect. But even the best values won't mean much if you're not communicating them clearly. So let's move on to the second C, communication, because clarity creates calm. How we communicate as leaders is going to set the entire tone for our culture. It's not just what we say, it's how we say it, when we say it, and how often we're saying it. Communication really is the difference between a team that's going to feel confident and one that's walking on eggshells. I'm sure we've all had that boss or leader in the past that when they were coming down the hallway, like you just did not make eye contact and you ducked because you're constantly walking on eggshells. That is not the culture we're trying to create. So let's talk about how communication can help with that. I want you to think about how you speak to your team. Are your words building trust or tension? Are you calm and clear, or are you just running in last minute with a new idea every 5 minutes? Employees don't like surprises. They don't like a lot of changes. They want to know what's coming, what's expected, and how success is measured. Because when everything feels like a fire drill, people stop listening and eventually they stop caring. Great communication is going to bring you calm. It gives your team confidence that you've got a plan and that they're part of it. A great way to help build this is feedback loops. So communication can't be one way. It's not just about how leaders are talking to their team. It's also about listening to their team. Are you asking your people for input? Do they feel like they can speak up when something's not working? Because the best teams have healthy feedback loops. And that's where ideas move up and down, maybe sideways, but it's how small businesses stay agile and innovative. So let's talk about some tools and some systems that we use at Align for communication. At Align, we've learned that communication really needs structure, and tools and rhythms make it easy to stay connected, especially when everyone's busy. We use Slack all day long for communication, and we've set up different channels for different purposes, so nothing is getting lost in our email. We've got our client data channel, which is showing us what's coming in. We've got team announcement channels, which is sharing about meetings, birthdays, wins. We have a process update channel, which keeps everyone in the loop on any changes. The team knows that if they post a message in the right place, they'll get a response. And that kind of clarity removes stress. Everyone knows where to go for information and what to expect. And I want you to remember that as a leader, you set the tone for communication. If you're respectful, consistent, and clear, your team is going to mirror that. If you're reactive, chaotic, and unclear, they're going to mirror that too. The words you use, the tone you take, and the timing of your communication, those are all culture signals. So one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make when communication is assuming that their team knows what success looks like. But the truth is, most of the time, they don't. Have you actually told your people what winning looks like? Do they know how you define a great day, a great week, or a great month? Or are they all just guessing? Because if your team has to guess what success looks like, they'll spend more time worrying than they will producing. At Align, we work really hard to communicate what winning looks like. That's for the firm, for each role, and even for individual projects. So let me give you some examples. Every team member has clear deliverables and deadlines in our project management system, so they know what is expected. They know when their work needs to be done, and they know that I am expecting it to be done by that time. There's no guessing or no questions. We also share KPIs and scorecards weekly, so people can see how their work connects to the bigger goal. They know that I'm looking. I think that's another thing is sometimes your team doesn't even know what you're looking at or what is important. But if you put it in front of them every single week, they're going to know, and then they're going to meet that expectation. We also have one-on-ones because when people know that they're winning, they keep showing up strong. It's really one of the simplest things you can do as a leader. Just tell your team what a win looks like, because clarity is going to give them confidence, and confidence is going to give you consistency. And if you really want to take one simple step this week, I would encourage you to go back to your team and ask each person, what does success look like in your role? Because you'll be amazed at the variety of answers you may get. And that's really your opportunity to bring that clarity, align expectations, and create calm. So that's the second C, communication. As you can see, clarity creates calmness, It's going to build trust, confidence, and consistency. But good communication also needs a rhythm, a predictable flow that keeps your team aligned week after week. Let's talk about that next. Cadence. The third C is cadence, and this one builds directly on communication. Cadence is simply the rhythm of your business. How often things happen, how often you meet, how often you check in. Employees, again, they want to know what is expected. They want to know what's next. A healthy cadence is going to give your team confidence and calm. I know that word keeps coming up, but that is truly what employees want. They're going to know what's coming, when it's coming, and where to bring issues when they arise. This is going to help you with all of the fire drills. You know, if people are coming at you all the time, you want to build cadence because they'll stop coming to you all of the time, every single day, if you give them a time of when to bring you issues. So let's break it down. Cadence is about your rhythms. That's the routines that bring order to chaos. I want you to think about how often are you meeting with your team, meeting with your leadership team, meeting with clients? How often are you sitting down one-on-one with employees? Because all of these rhythms are going to set the pace for your entire culture. When you don't have them, everything feels reactive. And when you do, everything feels stable and intentional. So let's talk about some examples. At Align, we've built intentional rhythms into how we run the firm. For example, we have a weekly production meeting Mondays at 2 p.m. This is our production team, the team doing the work. They meet every Monday at 2, and we review where we're at in production, what deadlines are coming up, and who has overdue tasks. We walk through why something's overdue and what we can do to fix it. The team knows exactly what we'll cover every week at the same time because it's the same agenda. There are no surprises. We also have weekly one-on-ones. Every team member gets to meet with our ops manager once a week. It's really their time to talk about what's going well, what challenges they're facing, what support they need. They know that if an issue comes up midweek, they can bring it to their one-on-one, and it will be heard. That's key. The structure, though, is creating the confidence and the ownership. Next, we have a monthly all-hands team meeting, and that's where once a month we bring the entire firm together. We talk about upcoming events, new clients, deadlines, new software, new team members. It's really our chance to keep everyone aligned and informed. Because if we're making a change, let's say like implementing new software, we explain why we're doing it, how it's going to help them, and what the plan is. That's how you start to get buy-in. We also have quarterly check-ins with me. So every employee gets to meet with me once a quarter. Before that meeting, they fill out a short form that covers where do you feel most successful right now? Where are you struggling? What resources or tools do you need? What feedback do you have for me? The last one's kind of big because it reminds them that they communicate both ways. And I want them to know that I am looking at their answers and we're having a conversation, that these things are important to me. I want them to realize that their success is important to me and that we've also built trust so they can bring certain things to me and we can work through them. So that's our quarterly touch point, and then our annual touch point. So we have a team retreat, and that's where once a year we take 2 days to really step back and look at the big picture. I give a state of the firm update, and that's what we've accomplished, where we're headed, what goals we're setting, and what goals we're setting next. We go into sessions to brainstorm how to make the firm better, and everyone walks away with clarity on where we're going and ownership in helping us get there. So through all of those rhythms and all of that cadence, what I have done is created predictability. Because when people know when they'll be heard or when updates are coming, And when they can bring up issues, it starts to eliminate chaos. They don't have to run into my office every time something comes up. They know there's a time and a place for the conversation. So cadence is going to give structure to the communication. And structure is what will allow you to scale. So if you want to improve cadence inside your business, here's where I would start. I want you to list your key rhythms. Write down how often you meet with your team, your leadership, your clients, anything that is a regular touch point. And then start to identify the gaps. Where are people left guessing or waiting on updates? And then create a consistent rhythm. Even if it's just one weekly check-in, pick a time and stick to it. And then you need to communicate the schedule. Let your team know when meetings happen and what they can bring to each one. Because cadence isn't about meetings, it's about creating consistency. Consistency is what's going to build trust, and trust builds culture. So that's the third C, cadence. It's really the heartbeat of your business. But culture isn't just about systems and schedules, it's about people. And that brings us to the fourth C, caring personally. Let's talk about what it means to lead with both your heart and accountability. So this one comes straight from one of my favorite leadership books, Radical Candor by Kim Scott. She says that great leaders learn to care personally and challenge directly. If you only challenge but you don't care, you're going to come off as a jerk. And if you only care but you never challenge, you're going to create chaos. The magic happens when you do both. When your people know that you care deeply about them as humans and that you'll tell them the truth because you want them to grow. Why does caring personally matter? When people feel cared for, they'll give more. They'll stay longer. They'll trust you when you have to make hard calls because they know your intent is good. Caring personally doesn't mean being best friends with your employees. It means genuinely caring about their success, their growth, and their life outside of work. And here's the thing, I can confidently say I care personally about every single person on my team. I want them to win. I want them to be successful, not just at work, but in life. And I'll do everything I can to make sure that happens. And if a day comes when they decide they can grow or be more successful somewhere else, I'll fully support that. Because if I've done my job right, I've helped them get there. That's what real leadership looks like. So how do we put this into action at Aligned? We make caring part of our culture. We know our people as whole humans, not just job titles. We know their kids' names, their goals, their strengths, and what they're working toward personally and professionally. Sometimes that means flexibility when life happens. That's a sick child, a family emergency, or just a bad day. It means celebrating personal milestones as much as professional ones. Birthdays, weddings, certifications, new homes. And it means checking in, not just about the work, but about them. A simple, how are you really, goes a long way in building trust. Caring personally also means investing in your people's growth. At Align, we push our team to learn, grow, and stretch. Not because we're hard on them, but because we care too much to let them stay stuck. That's why we build personal development into our one-on-ones. We ask questions like, what skill do you want to build next? Where do you feel stuck? What do you want more of in your role? It's not just about performance, it's also about potential. So if you really want to improve how you care personally as a leader, here's a few practical ways to start. I want you to learn one thing about each team member's life outside of work. You don't have to get personal. Just show them you care enough to remember. Start your one-on-ones with a human check-in. Before you dive into the work, ask, how are you doing this week? And actually listen. You can also give recognition often. Catch people doing something right, because a simple message or a shout out is going to build trust faster than a raise sometimes. And keep boundaries clear. Caring personally doesn't mean fixing everyone's problems. It means supporting them with empathy while still holding them accountable. So that's the fourth C, caring personally. It's the foundation of trust. But caring without accountability is going to create chaos. And that's where the fifth and final C comes in, challenging directly. Because if you care enough to lead well, you have to care enough to tell the truth. This one is where leadership gets real. In Radical Candor, Kim Scott teaches that the best leaders do two things at the same time. They care personally and they challenge directly. As I mentioned before, if you only care but you don't challenge, you're going to create comfort without growth. And if you only challenge but you don't care, you're going to create fear without trust. The balance of both is where real development happens, where people feel supported and stretched. So why does this really matter? As leaders, our job isn't to keep people comfortable. It's to help them reach their potential. And that means learning to give honest, timely, and helpful feedback, even when it's uncomfortable. Because feedback, when done right, isn't criticism. It's a gift. It says, I believe you can do better, and I care enough to help you get there. That's pretty powerful. So how do you put this into action? I'll tell you what I do. And I do this with every team member. I give direct feedback about what's working, what needs improvement, and what's next for their growth. As a leader, learning how to give feedback is one of the smartest skills you can build. Because if you're constantly tearing people down, or if your feedback is vague and unhelpful, your best people will leave. Feedback isn't about control, it's about care. It's saying, I see your potential and I'm not going to let you waste it. For feedback to land, there has to be trust. My team has to trust my judgment and my intent. They have to know that I want what's best for them. That's why before I ever challenge someone, I make sure they know I care personally. Because when people believe you're on their side, they can actually hear the feedback and use it. I've had some very honest conversations with my team, and I've told people, if you want to be promoted, you have to learn to receive feedback because growth requires humility. And I remind them that the reason I'm pushing you is because I see something in you worth pushing for. So let's talk about how do we give feedback that is helpful and doesn't hurt. If you want to improve how you challenge directly, here's a simple framework. We're going to give feedback fast. Don't wait weeks to talk about it. You need to do it while it's fresh, even if it's uncomfortable, because it's going to be. You also need to be clear and specific. Avoid the you need to do better and say something like, here's what great looks like next time. You also have to assume positive intent. This is super important and where I think a lot of people can go wrong. Start with something like, I'm sharing this because I care about your success. And then you need to invite dialogue and ask them, how does that feel to you? Or what support would help you do this better? Because feedback isn't a speech, it's a conversation. And when you're giving feedback, it doesn't need to be a one-way street. It needs to be a conversation. So that's the fifth C, challenging directly. When you care personally and you challenge directly, you are going to create a culture of truth and growth. People know you have their back, and they also know you'll tell them the truth. And that combination, caring and candor, is what builds strong, high-performing teams that actually stay. So here's the truth. Every business already has a culture. Whether you've built it on purpose or not, one already exists. It shows up in how you talk to your team, how you handle stress, how you give feedback, and how you celebrate wins. The real question is it intentional? Or did it just happen while you were busy running everything else? Because culture doesn't fall apart all at once. It starts small. It starts with a miscommunication here or a missed expectation there, a little resentment, a little silence, a little apathy. And before you know it, you've lost your best people. And it's not because of pay, but it's because of momentum. When you lose momentum, you lose the energy that drives growth. That's why building culture on purpose isn't the soft stuff. It is strategy. It's the foundation of every great business. When I started Align CPA, I thought the hardest part of running a business would be the numbers, the processes, the strategy, the growth. But the hardest part and the best part has been the people. The people who show up every day, care deeply about our clients, and carry the mission forward. I've learned that leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about being responsible for the people in your charge. It's about giving them clarity when things feel uncertain. It's about caring enough to coach them and challenge them to grow. And it's about showing up consistently because your team will model what you do, not what you say. So if there's one thing I want you to walk away with today, it's this. Great culture doesn't happen by accident. It is built on purpose. You build it when you define your values. You build it when you communicate clearly. You build it when you create the rhythm, when you care personally, and when you challenge directly. You build it one conversation, one meeting, one moment of courage at a time. And your business deserves a culture that moves it forward, not one that holds it back. Your people deserve leadership that brings out the best, not one that burns them out. And you deserve to lead a business that doesn't just make money, but it makes a difference. So I want you to start building that culture. Do it on purpose, because when you do, your business won't just grow, it will thrive. Thanks for tuning in to Upleveling. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more entrepreneurs like you discover the show. Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with us on social media or visit aligncpa.com for resources and updates. Until next time, keep leading, optimizing, and upleveling.